You feel the vibration first, a low, constant thrum through the floor of the capsule, traveling up through the soles of your boots, settling somewhere in your chest. Outside the viewport, nothing but dark blue fading into black. Earth is already small enough to cover with your thumb. You've been watching it shrink for 3 days, but you're not looking back anymore. Ahead, growing almost imperceptibly against the stars, is a point of light that no longer twinkles. It holds its position with a patience that feels deliberate. Saturn, pale gold, waiting. The journey has taken years, not just in travel time but in preparation, the training, the isolation tests, the goodbyes you said knowing they might be the last. You've run the simulations so many times the procedures have become muscle memory, detached from their meaning. But simulation never included this. The quiet, the absolute certainty that every person who has ever existed is now behind you, growing smaller by the second. The spacecraft hums around you like a living thing. Life support cycles, filters clean air you've already breathed 1,000 times, water recycled from your own body. You are a closed system now, a tiny bubble of homeostasis adrift in an environment that offers nothing. And still, Saturn grows. Soon, it will be large enough to fill the viewport entirely. Then too large. Then you will be inside it, and the viewport will show only what the planet allows you to see. By then, Earth will be a statistical abstraction, a coordinate in the navigation computer, a place that exists in memory, but no longer in reach. You knew this when you left. Everyone knew. The trajectories were calculated down to the millimeter, the fuel margins analyzed by teams of engineers who spent years arguing over every gram of mass. The numbers were clear from the beginning. This was always a one-way ticket, but numbers are abstract. They don't convey what it feels like to watch the last place you could ever call home disappear behind you, replaced by something that has no use for you, that doesn't know you exist, that will continue its slow turn around the sun long after your signals have faded, long after your oxygen runs out, long after the last conscious thought ever thinks itself inside this metal shell. Saturn looms, beautiful, silent, and absolutely indifferent to the fact that you are coming. But the view from approach is deceptive. From a distance, the planet looks serene, almost gentle. It's only when you cross a certain threshold that you understand. Saturn has been saving its true nature for those who come too close. From a distance, Saturn looks almost habitable. Not habitable in the way Earth is, of course, but compared to the other worlds we've visited, it offers something strange. Familiarity. When you see it through a telescope, when the images come back from orbiters, something about it reads as accessible. The pale gold evokes deserts. The cream-colored bands suggest cloud layers, like the ones we walk beneath every day. Even the rings, impossibly thin, feel like something you could reach out and touch. This visual comfort is an illusion, but it's a persistent one. The other planets don't hide their hostility. Mercury announces itself with stark, cratered lifelessness. Venus glows with a poisonous yellow-white heat that everyone recognizes as lethal. Mars, for all its romanticism, shows you rust and dust and an atmosphere so thin you'd feel it killing you instantly. Jupiter, even from far away, looks like a storm, like something that would tear you apart. But Saturn invites you closer. Its gravity, at the cloud tops, is roughly Earth-like, slightly stronger, but not crushingly so. A person standing on a surface where one could stand, which doesn't exist, would weigh about the same as they do at home. The temperature, in the upper atmosphere, hovers around what we'd call a cold winter day. Minus 170 degrees Celsius at the cloud decks, yes, but warm compared to the moons. Warm compared to the endless black between stars. And the light. Saturn receives about 1% of the sunlight Earth does, which sounds dark until you experience it. 1% of Earth's sunlight is still brighter than a full moon night. It's enough to see by, enough to cast soft shadows, enough to make the cloud tops glow with a diffuse, golden luminescence that feels almost like dawn. The rings, when you finally pass beneath them, are not the solid band they appear from a distance. They're fragments, ice and rock and dust, each particle orbiting alone, separated by miles of empty space. You could fly through them and never hit a thing. And when the sun catches them from behind, they light up like someone turned on the sky. It's beautiful, disarmingly so. If you didn't know better, if you hadn't studied the data, you might almost imagine stepping out onto those clouds. You might picture a habitat floating in the upper atmosphere, harvesting energy from the distant sun, drawing water from the rings. Engineers have drawn up the plans. It's theoretically possible. A city in the clouds of Saturn. And that's where the illusion does its work, because Saturn looks survivable. It looks like a place you could adapt to, given enough technology, enough time, enough ingenuity. The numbers on paper support the fantasy. Gravity, acceptable. Temperature, manageable with insulation. Radiation, less lethal than Jupiter's. Atmosphere, mostly hydrogen and helium, which won't poison you instantly if you're in a suit. But the numbers leave something out. Something you can't measure from a distance. Something that only reveals itself when you stop observing Saturn and start trying to exist inside it. The planet has been waiting. Not with intent, there is no intent, but with physics. With forces that have been operating for billions of years, undisturbed, unopposed, building toward a kind of equilibrium that has no place for visitors. And the closer you get, the more you realize. Saturn doesn't just fail to support life. It actively dismantles the conditions that make life possible. Not through dramatic violence, not at first. Through something more patient, more thorough. But to understand why Saturn rejects us so completely, you have to stop looking at the clouds and start looking at what's beneath them. Because the surface, the thing every world we know has, the thing we instinctively look for, doesn't exist here. And that changes everything. There is no ground. This is the first fact that separates Saturn from every world humanity has ever known. Every instinct, every evolutionary memory, every assumption your body makes about existing on a planet, all of it assumes a surface, something solid beneath you, a place where down stops. Saturn doesn't have one. Below the clouds you see from orbit, below the golden haze and the ammonia ice crystals, the planet continues, and continues, and continues. For 50,000 kilometers there is no floor, no shoreline, no bedrock, nothing to stand on, nothing to land on, nothing to build upon. Just atmosphere, growing denser, hotter, more pressurized, until the very concept of a surface loses meaning. This is what a gas giant is. Not a planet with a thick atmosphere. A planet that is mostly atmosphere, surrounding a core so deep, so compressed by unimaginable pressure, that it exists in a state no human has ever witnessed. A core that may be rocky, may be metallic, may be something else entirely, but you will never reach it. The journey down would kill you long before you got close. The transition begins subtly. You descend through the upper cloud decks, through the ammonia layer, through the ammonium hydrosulfide region that gives Saturn its golden tint. The capsule around you, designed for the vacuum of space, now faces something it was never meant to encounter. Pressure. Not much at first, a few atmospheres, manageable. Your life support compensates. But the pressure doesn't stop increasing. Every kilometer you descend, the weight of the atmosphere above you adds to the force pressing against your hull. 10 atmospheres, 20, 50. The numbers on the displays climb steadily, implacably, like a countdown to something structural. The hull, engineered to hold back the absolute zero of space, now holds back something far more aggressive. Hydrogen, heated and compressed, searching for any weakness. And this is only the beginning. Because Saturn's atmosphere doesn't just press, it moves. At the cloud tops, wind speeds exceed 1,500 kilometers per hour. Not gusts, sustained circulation. Currents of hydrogen and helium that wrap around the entire planet, driven by internal heat left over from the planet's formation. The capsule, once you enter the moving atmosphere, stops being a spacecraft and becomes debris. Carried, tumbled, subjected to forces no human body was designed to endure, but even this you might survive for a time. The capsule was built for extremes. The human body, sheltered inside it, might endure the buffeting, the pressure, the darkness that deepens with every passing minute. Then the temperature begins to rise. Not from the sun is long gone, its light scattered and absorbed by the kilometers of atmosphere above you. The heat comes from below, from compression, from the simple physics of gas under pressure. At 50 kilometers down, it's survivable. At 100 kilometers, your life support struggles. At 200, the heat exceeds anything Earth's surface has ever produced. And still there is no end. No floor, no relief, just deeper, hotter, more pressurized atmosphere, extending down for tens of thousands of kilometers you will never travel. And somewhere in this descent, you realize something. The capsule is not descending through an environment. It is being consumed by one. Saturn doesn't have weather the way Earth does. It has atmosphere all the way down, all the way through. A continuous medium that transitions from gas to supercritical fluid to something else without ever offering a boundary. You are not entering a place. You are being absorbed into a process. But the pressure, the heat, the wind, these are still just precursors. Because below a certain depth, hydrogen itself begins to change. And when it does, the rules of physics that have protected you your entire life start to bend. At 2,000 kilometers below the cloud tops, hydrogen stops being a gas. This is not a gradual transition. It is a phase change, a boundary as distinct as the surface of an ocean, but invisible. You cannot see it coming. There is no shoreline, no warning, no moment of decision. One moment the capsule is falling through atmosphere. The next, it is sinking into something else. Hydrogen, under enough pressure, becomes a liquid. Not liquefied in the way you might cool it into a cryogenic fluid, but compressed until its atoms give up their gaseous freedom and collapse into a state they were never meant to occupy. Around you now, pressing against every square centimeter of the hull, is an ocean of molecular hydrogen. No light has reached this depth for billions of years. No sound travels as it does in air. The capsule, still falling, still descending, is now a tiny metal bubble in an infinite, dark sea. And still, there is no bottom. 10,000 kilometers down, and the pressure has passed 1,000,000 times Earth's atmosphere at sea level. The numbers have stopped meaning anything. They are just digits on failing displays, representing forces that exist far outside human experience. Every square inch of the capsule's hull now withstands the weight of a mountain range. The metal creaks, not with the sound it would make in air, but with vibrations transmitted through the liquid hydrogen, conducted through your bones. At this depth, temperature has passed the point where water would boil, then where lead would melt, then where most materials begin to lose their structural identity. Inside the capsule, you are still alive, still breathing recycled air, still thinking, still aware, still watching the displays update with information that has become purely academic. Because the capsule is failing, not catastrophically, not yet, but slowly, incrementally, at scales too small to see. Hydrogen atoms, forced by pressure into spaces they don't belong, diffuse through crystalline metal structures. Embrittlement, the engineers call it. A process that turns tough alloys into something brittle, something that will eventually crack. When the first hull breach comes, it will not be dramatic. There will be no explosion, no sudden decompression. The pressure outside is too great, the difference too extreme. A crack forms. Liquid hydrogen floods in. It will be over in seconds. But you may not reach that point, because something else is happening, thousands of kilometers below, and it has already begun to reach for you. Deep within Saturn, the pressure becomes so immense that molecular hydrogen can no longer exist. The atoms themselves give up. Their electrons, no longer able to orbit their nuclei, are stripped away and set free. The hydrogen becomes something new, something that exists nowhere on Earth under natural conditions. Metallic hydrogen, a sea of protons and electrons, moving independently, conducting electricity with an efficiency no terrestrial material can match. And because Saturn rotates rapidly, because this metallic layer is fluid and electrically conductive, it generates a magnetic field. Not a weak one, not a modest one. A magnetic field second only to Jupiter's in the entire solar system. A field that stretches millions of kilometers into space, that traps radiation, that would destroy electronics and irradiate humans in minutes, if they ever got close. But you are not in space anymore. You are inside the source. The magnetic field here is not something that affects your instruments from a distance. It is the environment. It wraps around you, passes through you, induces currents in every conductive material the capsule contains. Wires short, circuits fail. Systems that have kept you alive for years begin shutting down, one by one, until only the most hardened components still function. And still, you fall. 20,000 kilometers down, 30,000. The pressure has entered a regime where the laws of materials break down. The capsule, whatever shape it once had, is being compressed, slowly, inexorably. The air inside grows dense, then liquid, then something else. Your body, protected for so long by the thin shell of your spacecraft, now experiences forces that no vertebrate was ever meant to survive. But you are still conscious, still thinking, still aware in some reduced way of what is happening. And this is where the escalation reaches its end. Because below you now, less than 10,000 kilometers away, is the core. Not a surface, not ground, but a region so compressed, so dense, so alien, that matter there exists in states physicists can only model. Temperatures higher than the surface of the sun, pressures that would crush atomic nuclei together. A place where the difference between rock and gas and metal stops mattering, because everything has been compressed into something unrecognizable. You will not reach it. The capsule, your body, every molecule that was once you, they will be incorporated first, compressed, heated, broken down into constituent atoms, then into nuclei and electrons, then into something that joins the slow churn of Saturn's interior. You will become part of the planet. A few extra tons of material, added to a world that has been collecting material for 4.5 billion years. But this is only the physical journey. The body ends here. The question is whether the mind, in its final moments, comprehends what it has become part of, and whether that comprehension offers anything like comfort. There is no rescue. This is the fact that separates every disaster on Earth from what happens here. On Earth, no matter how remote, no matter how extreme, there is always the possibility of someone coming. A ship, a helicopter, a team with equipment and training and the will to reach you. The possibility may be small, but it exists. It is built into the human understanding of crisis. Here, it does not. The mathematics of the situation were calculated before you left. The rocket equation, the tyranny of the fuel-mass ratio, the orbital mechanics that govern all movement in the solar system. They do not care about intent. To reach Saturn, you burned almost everything. To slow down, you burned almost everything that remained. The capsule you descend in is not a vehicle anymore. It is a projectile, committed to its trajectory by forces no human engine can overcome. Even if someone wanted to come for you, even if every spacefaring nation on Earth pooled their resources and launched tomorrow, they would arrive years too late. And when they got here, they would find nothing. No capsule, no signal, no trace. Just the rings, turning slowly in the distant sunlight, and the planet, patient and massive, and utterly unchanged by your passing. Communication becomes impossible long before the hull fails. The hydrogen around you absorbs radio waves with an efficiency that increases with pressure. Your signals, already weak after traveling hundreds of millions of kilometers, die within meters of the capsule. Earth, if anyone is still listening, hears only the hiss of the planet's own radiation. They will never know the moment. They will never hear your last words. And this isolation, this absolute severing from everything human, forces a recognition that nothing in your life has prepared you for. You are not dying in a place. You are dying inside something. The distinction matters. On Earth, death happens against a background of life. The soil contains seeds. The air carries spores. The water teems with microorganisms that will begin their work the moment the body stops resisting. You return to a system that understands you, that has processes for your kind of matter, that will incorporate you into the next generation of living things. Here, there is no such system. The hydrogen around you has never been part of a living organism. The pressures and temperatures have never encountered carbon-based biology. Your body, when it finally breaks apart, will release molecules that have never existed in this part of the solar system. Water, complex organic compounds, traces of elements that Saturn has in abundance, but arranged in configurations the planet has never seen. You will not be incorporated. You will not be recycled. You will simply be broken down, molecule by molecule, until nothing remains that ever knew it was alive. And still, the descent continues. The capsule by now may have lost all recognizable form. The metals have flowed like liquids under pressures that exceed their yield strength. The electronics are crushed, shorted, dissolved into the hydrogen sea. Your body, protected for these last moments by whatever air pocket remains, experiences forces that should be impossible to survive. But survival is no longer the goal. The goal, if there ever was one, was to see, to know, to be present at a place no human had ever been, witnessing what no human had ever witnessed. And in that sense, you have succeeded. You are here. You are inside Saturn. You are experiencing, for whatever duration consciousness can be maintained, what it means to be absorbed by a world. But the question that remains, the one that cannot be answered by physics or engineering, is what happens in the final seconds. When the body fails and the capsule dissolves and only awareness remains, what does it feel like to become part of something so vast? And does the mind, confronted with infinity, find peace or terror? There is a final moment. It does not arrive with drama. There is no climax, no sudden transition, no point at which everything becomes clear. The pressure increases, the temperature rises. The boundaries between things, between capsule and atmosphere, between body and environment, between self and not self, begin to blur in ways that feel physical, but are really something else. And then, quietly, without announcement, you cross a threshold. Not a threshold in the planet, a threshold in yourself. The last systems fail. The last conscious thought forms and fades. The last electrical impulse in your nervous system fires and finds no response. And what was you, the pattern, the awareness, the thing that left Earth years ago with purpose and fear and hope, ceases to be an event and becomes simply material. But material, here, does not mean the same thing it meant on Earth. Your atoms, scattered now through layers of hydrogen that stretch for thousands of kilometers, begin a new kind of journey. The carbon that built your cells, synthesized originally in the heart of a star that died before Earth formed, drifts deeper. The oxygen that last entered your lungs in the capsule's recycled air finds new bonds, new configurations. The water that was you, that made up most of what you were, separates into hydrogen and oxygen and joins the vast reservoirs of both that Saturn has held since its birth. You do not go anywhere. You become everywhere. And this, perhaps, is the only comfort the universe offers. Not survival, not continuation of the self, but continuation of the self's matter. The atoms that were briefly arranged into you, will be arranged into something else. Not life, not here, not ever, but something. Part of the slow churn of a world that has been turning for billions of years and will turn for billions more. Saturn does not know you were there. It cannot know. It has no awareness, no consciousness, no capacity to register the difference between a human falling through its atmosphere and a rock doing the same. You are an event so small, so brief, so insignificant in the context of its existence, that the distinction between your presence and your absence is mathematically zero, and yet you knew it. For a time, however short, a piece of the universe became aware of another piece, a thinking thing, born on a planet neither of you will ever see again, traveled across the emptiness to be here, to witness, to add its small consciousness to the sum of things that have experienced Saturn directly. The rings continue to turn. The clouds continue to flow. The deep interior continues its slow convection, carrying traces of you now, distributing them through layers that will never see light. And somewhere, hundreds of millions of kilometers away, on a planet that has already forgotten you were gone, people look up at a point of light in the night sky and call it by its name. They do not know you are there. They will never know, but you are. And in the darkness, in the pressure, in the infinite slow drift of atoms through a world that has no use for them, that fact remains. You are here. You were here. And before you stopped being anything at all, you saw. That was always the point.